It's a Friday 5 plus a bonus. What do I mean by that? You'll find out next on the LockedOn Giants podcast.
You are Locked On Giants, your daily New York Giants podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, New York Giant fans, and welcome to another edition of the Locked On Giants podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast family, your team every day. Happy Friday, everybody. This is Patricia Traina, your host, and thank you so much for tuning in, making us your first listen of the day, or if you're watching on YouTube, your first watch of the day. And thank you always for subscribing and liking our channel here on YouTube, or if you subscribe to our audio platforms, we appreciate that as well. So, we've made it to the end of the week. We are getting so close to the draft. We've got another full week to go before we get into draft week. And boy, the countdown is on. It's getting exciting. The mock draft season is about to come to an end, thank God, right? And just all these different scenarios that we can talk about. We're going to get answers soon. I feel like this has been, like a television series full of intrigue, just wondering how the different twists and turns are going to influence the outcome of the draft. And I feel like the draft is kind of like the grand season finale of the television show, where we finally get the answers that we've been waiting for literally months. So that's coming up, and next week we've got a busy week ahead of us. Joe Shane's going to speak. We've got the Giants voluntary mini camp that's coming up. But first, we've got a show to do today, and today's show is a Friday 5 plus 1. Now, what do I mean by that? I have 5 scenarios that I came up with, 5 questions that I'm going to talk about, give you my thoughts on what I think will happen with these 5 questions. And then I said, you know what, there's one more I want to include. So that's the plus 1. So I couldn't really call it a Friday 5 when in fact I have 6 scenarios that I'm going to talk about. I guess if I had done this on Saturday, this show, I could have called it the Saturday 6. But hey, it's a holiday weekend for me, so I'm going to do it this way. Hope you don't mind. So anyway, let us get right into them. We'll do 2 per segment, and we're going to kick it off with the question, should the Giants draft a quarterback? Ooh. Now, if you have listened to me, if you have also read me on Giants Country, you know that I am not particularly a fan of this quarterback class. That being said, remember how I said at the start of the program that, as we get closer to the draft, it's kind of like the penultimate episode in a series, a drama series, and then ultimately you get your answers. Well, it's starting to come out that some of the NFL teams actually like this quarterback class. Now, do they like him enough to want to make a move or anything like that? That I don't know. Will the Giants draft a quarterback? It won't be in the first round if they do. But here's the thing. Could they draft a quarterback for value maybe some point at day 3? I don't think they will, but I could see a scenario where they might. Now, let me explain why I don't think they will. They've got Tyrod Taylor under contract behind Daniel Jones. They've got Davis Webb, and despite what you might think of Davis Webb, he is going to be kind of like a player coach for that offense, a guy who knows Brian Dable's system, and a guy who's going to be able to teach that system, if you will, to the members of the offense. So I don't think Davis Webb is going anywhere. So what about adding a developmental quarterback at some point on day 3? Would the Giants do that? I could see a case for that because, look, Davis Webb, I think, is only signed for 1 year. And I don't know if he's a guy that you necessarily want to carry for multiple years. At some point, you want to get younger. You want to make sure that you have your quarterback situation settled moving forward. So I could see a scenario where maybe the Giants say, you know what, let's draft a developmental guy, stick him on the practice squad, and just see how things go this coming year. If, God forbid, Daniel Jones gets injured and now you've got to push everybody up the chain, you promote Tyrod Taylor to the starter. Davis Webb can be your backup. And then the developmental quarterback, if you're carrying 3 quarterbacks, can be promoted up the chain. So that's a scenario that I could see happening. Now, should they or will they draft a quarterback on day 3? I don't think it's realistic because, look, the Giants have a lot of needs. I think we can all agree on that. And why take a position that right now is kind of hit and miss over something that you might need that's a little bit more pressing? So, I hate to say it because I know I said I wouldn't do this, but I almost would rather they draft a punter than a quarterback at this point, because I just feel like if Daniel Jones isn't the answer at quarterback, they're going to dip their toes into the quarterback pool next year. So I kind of would hate to see them waste a draft pick on a guy that may or may not stick around. Even though we're talking day 3, even though we're talking, a guy who would be a developmental prospect, and if he doesn't work out, no big deal. I'd like to see them hit on as many draft picks as they possibly can. And I just don't think, drafting a quarterback is the way to go. Now, if they want to sign an undrafted free agent and develop them that way, that I wouldn't have a problem with. But I just don't think they should trade for one. I don't think they should draft one. I could also see a scenario where maybe if the Giants want to move around the board, maybe they package up some of those late day 3 picks to move up. So just my feeling on that, I would not draft a quarterback if I'm the Giants. I don't care who it is. I know the board's value is going to dictate whether or not they do it. I personally wouldn't do it. I've run many mock simulations, and I know the Giants, they've got a better big board than I will ever have, but I just can't justify it given all the needs that this team has, and knowing that they may have to sacrifice drafting at a certain position because the value might not be there, or because, let's face it, they're not going to solve all the needs in one offseason. So that's my feeling on that point. All right, point number 2. Speaking of not being able to address all the needs, if it comes down to inside linebacker or safety, which position would I want to take and why? I'm going to go with safety over inside linebacker. Safety, to me, right now you've got Julian Love, you got Xavier McKinney. Those are your 2 most experienced safeties. You don't really have a lot of experience behind those guys. Inside linebacker, Blake Martinez is under contract. He should be okay coming off of that torn ACL. You've got Tate Crowder. You've got Carter Coughlin who can play inside. I just feel like they have some bodies that could play the inside linebacker position. Would I like to upgrade the position? Absolutely. Don't get me wrong. But I think in terms of prioritizing, should it be, if it comes down to, okay, which of the 2 positions would we need to pass on, safety or inside linebacker? I'd punt on inside linebacker, to be honest with you. I would maybe go and look at to fill that next year in some way, shape, or form. Safety, you need depth, which I don't think they have to speak of. And, I just keep thinking what we know about Wink Martindale's system, which, we'll find out hopefully a little bit more in the next week. They need to beef up that secondary. So I would like to see safety over inside linebacker if it comes down to choosing one or the other, which it probably won't, but let's just put it this way. If the Giants don't draft an inside linebacker, if they have to go the undrafted free agent route, I'd be fine with that. Just get a safety. That's all I ask. So, all right, folks, we've got 4 more scenarios on this Friday 5 plus bonus plus 1 Friday for you. So we'll have 2 more coming up after this. All right, Giant fans, we have more coming up on today's LockedOn Giants podcast. But first, there's only one place that offers the best information for the latest odds, contests, and player props for all your sports betting needs, and that is betonline.net. From basketball to hockey to baseball, UFC, boxing, the upcoming Triple Crown, you name it, and BetOnline.net has you covered. BetOnline.net is your continued source for all your sports wagering information needs, including live betting and your favorite Vegas casino games. So head on over to the website today to learn more about the trends and the action. BetOnline, where the game starts. All right, Giant fans, welcome back to the LockedOn Giants podcast. I am Patricia Traina, and before we continue on with our Friday 5+1, just want to give you a heads up about the Locked On NFL Draft live coverage and Audacity NFL mock draft special. Thanks so much, as always, for making Locked On Giants your first listen every day. Now, we have a big announcement. Starting Thursday, April 28th, tune into the Locked On NFL Drafts live coverage of the 2022 draft with all 3 days of real-time analysis from our extensive lineup of experts and insiders. And for those of you who are dying to know who your team will take, catch Odyssey in the Locked On NFL's mock draft special, hosted by Brian Peacock and former scout Matt Williamson of the Peacock and Williamson NFL show, all week leading up to the first pick. All right, so what dates do you need to put on your calendar, folks? Locked On NFL Draft Live will be on the Locked On NFL Draft YouTube page. You could also pick that up on the Odyssey app. And that will start on April 28th, 7 p.m. Eastern, and on April 29th, 6:30 p.m. Eastern, and April 30th, 11:30 a.m. Eastern. And the Odyssey NFL mock draft runs April 18th through the 22nd, and then on the 25th. So make sure you check all that out. I made a couple picks, obviously, for the Giants. I think you'll like the picks I made. I'd be shocked if you don't. So, all right, let us get back to our scenarios here. So I've got a couple more for this segment, and then we'll wrap it up with a couple more after that. Item number 3, how many offensive linemen will the Giants draft? I'm going to say at least 2. All right, this is how I kind of see this playing out. Obviously, I think they're going to get an offensive tackle in the first round. I would be stunned if they don't get an offensive tackle in the first round. All right, finish that offensive line rebuild. And, you know, you guys who have been watching this show or listening to the show, you know, I've had several draft experts come on, and they have all said that you have the big 3 of Evan Neal, Ike Ekwonu, and Charles Cross, and then afterwards there's a little bit of a drop-off in terms of the talent and the value. So just finish the job. You know, you've come so far with this offensive line. Finish it up. Don't take your foot off the gas pedal at this point. All right, now, I also think the Giants are going to look to add a second offensive lineman, maybe an interior guy at some point on, I'm going to say day 3. I don't think it'll be day 2. It could be, but I think day 3 might make more sense. Now, why do I think that? Why do I think the Giants are going to add another offensive lineman and an interior? Well, look at the contracts that they handed out in free agency. With the exception of Mark Lewinsky, every veteran offensive lineman they sign is signed to a 1-year deal. Also, look at the structure of the contracts. Now, I have said this many times. If you want a big clue as to how a team might be thinking when it drafts or it's about to draft, just look at how they structure contracts. So when a team, for example, puts in a per-game roster bonus, there's probably a possibility that they might be anticipating that player might not make it through the entire season for one way or another, be it due to injury, be it due to a coach's decision. So think about it in terms of, wouldn't it make sense for the Giants to draft a day 3 offensive lineman, an interior offensive lineman, get the guy ready so that he could play anywhere along, you know, the interior, center, guard, either guard spot. And as the season goes on, and at that point, you probably have a better idea which of the guys on a 1-year deal you're going to keep and which ones you're not going to keep. Maybe make a switch, you know, like after the bye week or something. So that's why I could see the Giants potentially taking 2 offensive linemen in this draft. Now, you know, again, I mentioned that they have a lot of needs and they should try to fill as many needs as possible. But look, as far as I'm concerned, even though it's offensive line, tackles one need, interior is another. So that would go a long way towards adding some young talent to a cupboard that right now is bare. And I would be stunned if the Giants don't do that. Now, I do think also that they will sign some undrafted free agents. Remember, the Giants don't have a lot of money, so I don't know that they're going to sign a ton of undrafted free agents. But I would think there'll be at least 2, maybe 3. I mean, we'll have to see what the final tally is, what they end up doing with the draft, if they trade a pick, acquire a pick, or whatnot. So that's still to be determined. All right, the next item on my Friday 5+1, running back or receiver, choose one. All right, so if I have to pick between running back or receiver, which would I pick and why? Tough one here, very tough. And here's why this is tough. Brian Daboll, when he ran the offense up in Buffalo, ran 11 personnel 71% of the time. You would think logic would dictate that he would do the same thing here with the Giants. Now, here's the thing. The Giants are going to look to presumably get Kenny Golladay more involved. They brought back Sterling Shepard. They have Kadarius Toney. And they, as of now, have Darius Slayton. They have receivers. All right. They also signed, I think, a few guys. They brought a few guys back. I think David Sills was brought back. And then they added a couple guys for special teams. So, receiver is generally thought to be one of the easiest positions for a college athlete to adapt to at the NFL level, because it's just a matter of running routes and, reading defenses and stuff like that. And it's thought, it is thought, and I don't know how true this is, some people might debate this, that a college receiver coming to the NFL has a shorter learning curve than a college running back, who not only has to learn to read defenses and all that stuff, but who also a lot of times has to learn how to pass pro. So, given that, folks, this is why if it came down to me and I had to choose between a receiver or a running back, I would take a running back. Get the running back in here. Teach him how to pass pro. Teach him, what he needs to know about reading defenses and stuff like that. Get him ready, because, what happens if Saquon Barkley, God forbid, gets injured again and has to miss time? All right, now you've got Matt Breida, you've got Antonio Williams, who may or may not make the roster. Get a young guy in here and start training him, if you will, for the NFL level. Because next year, I don't see the Giants keeping both Breida and Barkley. One of those two is not going to be back, possibly both. So you really want to be caught flat-footed without anybody, to step in who doesn't know your system? Doesn't make sense. So to me, if I'm the Giants and I have to choose between running back or wide receiver, I'm going running back all day, every day. I'm going running back probably in day 3. I know there have been some reports that maybe they might go day 2 for running back, like 3rd round. I don't think that makes sense, but, I'm not being paid to make that decision. So that's Joe Shane's decision. We'll see if they do it. I think day 4. Now, there have been some reports that the Giants might take a running back in round 3. I think those reports are being thrown around because Buffalo took Devin Singletary, I think, in the 3rd round. But my guess right now is that they will probably look to the 4th round, early day 3, in other words, to add a running back. That to me would make the most sense. All right, folks, we've got 2 more on this Friday 5+1 edition of the LockedOn Giants podcast. I'll have those 2 for you right after this. All right, Giant fans, we have more coming up on today's LockedOn Giants podcast. But first, Built Bar is the protein bar that tastes like a candy bar, but without the sugar and without the calories. Most Built Bars contain about 130 calories, 4 grams of sugar, 4 net carbs, and 17 grams of protein, and they taste great. Built Bar offers 9 amazing flavors in nut and nut-free variety, plus a rotating limited-time offering of different flavors that changes every few weeks. Head on over to BuiltBar.com today and see what their current flavor lineup looks like. And use our special promo code LOCKED15 to save 15% off your first order. That's code LOCKED15, LOCKED15, for 15% off your first order at BuiltBar.com. All right, Giant fans, welcome back to the LockedOn Giants podcast. Patricia Traina here with you on this Friday edition of the show. Thank you again for making us your first listen of the day, or if watching on YouTube, your first watch of the day. And I hope you're enjoying the program. And I know a lot of you are probably getting ready for the holiday weekend. And those of you who are, I wish you, whatever it is you celebrate, I wish you a very happy one. And if you're not celebrating any holidays this weekend, I just hope you have a good weekend. Get some rest up, enjoy, the good weather. Hopefully you have good weather wherever you're at, because a couple weekends from now, we're going to be all stuck inside following the NFL draft, and we're going to find out what the Giants have in store for us. So exciting times. All right, we are doing a Friday 5+1 on today's Locked On Giants podcast. We have 2 more items on my list. Wrote them down on my little pad here. Okay, so here's an interesting one. And by the way, these questions were inspired by you guys and gals. You guys, through your letters to the editor and whatnot, gave me some of these ideas. So I want to thank y'all for sending them. I mean, I've got a lot of suggestions, and for me to, I apologize that I don't have your names, to list, but that would take up a whole show in itself. But you know who you are. So thank you, as always, for providing suggestions. All right. Item number 5, one move the New York Giants might make that would not make sense, or what I call a throw the remote type of move. All right, for me, this one is kind of easy. For me, the move that would not make sense would be if the Giants got out of the first round and did not take an offensive tackle. That would probably just make me sit up and scream, what the heck is going on here? I mentioned earlier in the program that a lot of draft analysts that I've had on the show as guests, that I've also spoken with, are of the opinion that there is a drop-off after the big 3. And to wait for the Giants to wait until the second day of the draft to get an offensive tackle, that would make me really wonder what's going on. Okay, so where am I coming up with this particular scenario? Quite frankly, because Joe Schoen, when he was in Buffalo, did not, or was not part of a management team that took an offensive lineman in the first round. Well, you know what, folks? There's a first time for everything. So just because Shane didn't do it up in Buffalo with Brandon Beane doesn't mean he's going to continue to do it or think that way here with the Giants. Let's face it. Last year, everybody questioned whether Dave Gettleman would trade down in the draft because, hey, he had never done it before. So anybody who suggested that he was going to trade down was kind of viewed as being crazy. And what did he do? He traded down in the first round, and he traded down again later in the draft. So you never say never. There's a first time for everything. And for me, again, if the Giants were to wait until day 2 to get their offensive tackle, I'd really have to question that. Again, I am of the opinion, finish the offensive line project. Do it right. Don't mess around. Don't get cute. Look, if you have an opportunity to trade away one of your first round picks, all right, whether it's 5, which I really wouldn't do, but I can see a case for trading 5, or pick number 7. And I'm going to talk about this, actually, spoiler alert, this is the next point, but actually, you know what? I'll wait until I get to the next point, which might as well get to it now. So anyway, point number 6 is, would you trade back from position number 5, pick number 5? And this was suggested by NFL.com draft analyst Daniel Jeremiah on the Pat McAfee show, who reported that he's been hearing the Giants are looking to get out of the number 5 overall spot. Now, that to me could potentially mean that the Giants feel that one of those offensive tackles, one or more of those offensive tackles, is going to be available at 7. So maybe they make a swap with somebody who's a quarterback-needy team to get ahead of the Carolina Panthers, also thought to be a quarterback-needy team. Would I make that trade? If all 3 offensive tackles were on the board at number 5, and I had my pick of the litter at that point, and I knew that a team looking for a quarterback wanted to come up, you bet I would make that trade. Absolutely. If it means I'm getting an extra 2023 first-round pick, I would do it in a heartbeat. Because think about it. If a team is trading up to get a quarterback, chances are they might struggle this year, which means that 2023 draft pick is probably going to be in the top 15, maybe even in the top 10. I'll take that, folks. You know, if the Giants need a quarterback next year, I'll take that. All right? I don't care where the Giants finish. As long as I get a pick in the top 10, courtesy of a trade partner, who's going to argue with that? It makes too much sense. So I could certainly see the Giants trading back at number 5. Now, would I do it just like this? You know, if let's say Equana was off the board and it came down to Evan Neal and Charles Cross, would I make that trade? Probably not. I would probably get my offensive tackle and call it a day, and then see about moving down from 7. But that's the scenario, what I outlined before, that would cause me to, would cause me to execute that trade. And that is if all 3 guys are on the board and I have an opportunity to still get one of them at number 7 while still picking up a 2023 first round draft pick. So that's what I would do. Now, if you have stuck with me throughout this whole podcast, I'd be curious, what would you do in these scenarios? Do you agree, disagree? Tell me in the comments if watching on YouTube, or send me an email. I do read the emails. I'm always curious to see what you guys and gals have to say. And, you could also include something for Twitter Tuesday, which we will be doing next week, as always. So, let me know what you think. All right, folks, that is going to do it for me on this LockedOn Giants Friday edition of the podcast. Hope you enjoyed it. Again, thank you for making us your first listen of the day, or if watching on YouTube, your first watch of the day. Have a fantastic weekend, and we will see you again on Monday.